Hello.
So we were talking about the Get Claimed quiz just right now, and
Mm-hmm.
it's actually working now for anybody who tried it early on, like I did. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think to go back to it yet, just because, like, I saw, at least when they first uploaded it, everybody in the comments was saying it didn't work for them.
Yeah, I know. I went back a couple days later.
Yeah. So the results are I got that I'm an Athena kid.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a Poseidon kid, of course I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of times these personality quizzes, it's like easy to get the answer you want if you really know enough. So
Yeah.
I was really trying to sit there and like think about it. And it's so funny because like so Shannon sent me a message earlier this week talking about, like I feel like you're being too hard on yourself. And the question of your strength comes up and I'm sitting there like I don't know. Like, I honestly have no idea. And I sat there for, like, I took a screen recording of me doing this, so we could probably upload that too. But, like, I sat there forever thinking, I don't know what my strength is.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So for today, we were thinking of talking about the original Titan War, the Titanomachy, just so that we can kind of lead into The Last Olympian, which we will eventually get to reading. We are going to read the supplementary text, I guess you could call them, that
Mm-hmm.
come in between first, but we are eventually going to finish this series because I really want to read just the next series of books.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody talks about them. There are so
Mm-hmm.
many characters that I've seen a lot about and I
Yeah.
don't know them yet. And I'm really like excited to get there.
Yeah. The next series is very interesting. I haven't read it since for a while. Since like before 2018, I haven't read them. But in general, it's interesting because like these books are like, I don't know, like people constantly talk about Heroes of Olympus because of imagining what it would be like on like a TV show for obvious reasons. People usually want that one to be animated for whatever reason. I don't know why, but they do. But I could see maybe why they might say that because everything happens in such a short amount of time in
Hmm.
those books, which is very opposite of these. Like these, the first five Percy Jackson books are like the things that happen in each book are like a couple weeks of their lives, but they take place over like, a couple years. Like Percy's 12 and they end when he turns 16.
Hmm.
But Heroes of Olympus, like the first book starts like in like the summertime and it takes all within like a month. It's all within like a month and a half. All this like just absolutely bonkers stuff happens to them and it's all within like this very compacted amount of time. It's just the first book is like setting up like what's going on with the other characters, and then after that it's just like everything just happens really quickly. And so there isn't like that build up in that way, which makes everything about it really interesting because there's like some character development, but I like that series a lot because Rick very obviously wrote it in a very different way on purpose.
Hmm.
Like the trio is like the opposite of Percy and Annabeth and Grover in the way that they like Percy, Annabeth, and Grover like go on a whole like character development journey with each other and with themselves, and those characters make like every wrong decision.
No.
And they like because it's happening so fast they don't it's almost like they don't have time to like really learn, and they're just in a very different situation. And so they just I like it because it's like, yeah, not every kid is going to be able to like handle all of this stuff the exact same way and like somehow get out of it without making too horrible of like a mistake or anything like that. But these ones do like the polar opposite, and it's just fun. And also like I told you, like I'm gonna start a tally when we're reading those books about like how many times does Percy say he wants to die. That people like don't, because he says it a lot. He's
Yeah.
he says it a lot in that series, and most people I think like kind of skip over it, but he says it a lot more in that series than any other series, than the first series so far. because he's really, really not happy in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, he's been through a lot.
yeah, the first book is like he wakes up after being in a coma for 8 months. And the thing that always, I try to like always remind people whenever I talk about that book with like Percy of like why he's the way that he is in that book series is that like to him, everything in this book series happened only a couple months ago. Like there is like the Last Olympian happens in August, like Percy's
Hmm.
birthday in the middle of August. And then he's at camp and like everything's okay for a couple months and he gets taken in like the middle of December right before Christmas. And then
Oh,
he doesn't
wow.
wake up again until 8 months later when it's like the summertime. And so to him, it's only been like 4 months since like Luke died and all that stuff happened. And so he still doesn't really know how to feel about the stuff with Luke, much less all of this other crap that's suddenly going on. And he's just like, oh my God, like, can I not do this anymore? It's like, no, I'm really sorry, sweetheart.
Oh, you gotta save the world again. Sorry.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. That's why the very new books that are coming out, the him doing the things to get his like recommendation letters for college, those are coming out like right after basically they come home, which is why
Hmm.
in those books he's just I'm like, "Oh, this is just complex PTSD." And in those books where he's just like having like flashbacks and panic attacks and emotional flashbacks and showing how he doesn't want to go to places because they remind him of bad things. Like I haven't even read those books, but people just like tell me things. And like one of the things I remember somebody told me at a certain point was in the second book, the one that just came out last year, that he has to go to like the Met Museum because Annabeth is there with like friends that she's made or
Hmm.
something like that. And he's convinced that none of Annabeth's friends like him, or they think that he's like an annoying like boy in the way that because he doesn't really talk. But it's that thing that we do sometimes. I definitely do this, where people think that we don't like people, but it's just because we think that they don't want to talk to us, and so we're just quiet
Hmm.
around new people. And he's doing that, and his her friends are giving him like weird looks, like who is this like boyfriend of yours that you love so much but won't talk to us? And but it's because he's at the Met, and the entire time he's there, he's thinking about how he was attacked when he was 12
Yeah.
and like he's literally walking through the Met Museum trying to figure out in his head where he could put like a safe room so that if any demigod ever gets attacked there like he did when he was 12 that they could be safe. Like I'm like, yeah, that's literally like complex PTSD of where you're in like a safe place but you keep thinking about something that traumatic happened to you and you just keep thinking about what you can do to keep other people safe so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
yeah, that's Percy in that book. Okay. So do you want to talk about the mythology stuff first, or do you want to do like
Yeah, let's talk about the mythology stuff because we could talk about Percy stuff forever. It feels
yeah,
like there's so much stuff coming
there's always
out.
so much. And then we can
Um,
go into like at the after we do the mythology stuff, we'll go into like stuff that's come out about the show and things like that since
yeah.
season 2 and season 3.
Hmm.
Since Comic-Con ended because we haven't really talked about it since then.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll start with the Titan War. So you kind of have to follow from we have the Uranus and Chronos stuff, and like, the too long didn't read version. I won't get too into it because I feel like you need trigger warnings if you get too into it.
Mm-hmm.
But is father usurps son is kind of the pattern that happens here. So Chronos takes over from his dad Uranus, but then he gets a prophecy from his dad like you're going to have a son do the same thing. So you need to watch out. And Kronos' bright idea on how to get around this is that when Rhea, his sister wife thing, has a baby, every time she has a baby, he eats it, and then it's not actually like out in the world. It can't hurt him. And at one point, Rhea goes to her parents, Gaia and Uranus, and she tells them, like, hey, I don't want this to happen anymore. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And they tell her to go hide away in a cave on, I believe it was Mount Ida in Crete, and go have the
Creed.
baby there. and
Out
then
of
give.
everywhere to be, they're in Crete again.
Yeah, I mean, Crete comes up over and over again. Um, so have the baby there and then give Kronos a rock to swallow. And so he swallows the rock thinking it's the baby. It's like swaddled in a blanket and stuff. So I don't know. Guy just swallowed it in one bite. Not like that one painting. There's like a Renaissance painting where it's like pretty gory the way that
Yeah.
they depict it. Um I don't think of it as him like chewing them. I think of it as him swallowing them whole if I have to, because then it makes more sense to me how they're able to be like magically regurgitated in reverse birth order. Yeah. So, Zeus gets saved. He gets raised on this mountain by himself. What ends up happening is nymphs end up raising him. He's suckled by goat milk and honey. And when he's a baby and they're trying to hide him here, every
Mhm.
time he cries, there's dancers with cymbals and they're like making noise so that it nobody can hear the baby. There's basically no information about his formative years. It's just like, and then he grew up and he decided to wage war with his dad. There's not really like, I was thinking about this because we were talking about adaptations and how people just work with what's already there.
Mhm.
Like, think about how much you could do with Zeus's like early adolescent and teenager years.
Mhm.
Like,
I
he could make it anything.
honestly wonder if there's probably I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot of if there's books like that out there about Zeus.
Probably.
There should be if there's not because like people have this weird like for like bad boys and
Hmm.
stuff. I feel like if you made Zeus like 15 and
Yeah.
like how people would imagine it and showed like him as this broken person or could be fixed, then people would be like, "Oh, I like Zeus now."
Yeah, it could be done. So he grows up and he tricks Kronos into taking some sort of potion that makes him regurgitate his babies in reverse order. The potion was most likely thought up by his first wife, Metis, who is Athena's mom. People don't like to acknowledge she's Athena's mom, but she
Mm,
was pregnant when Zeus swallowed her. Zeus is just the one who gave birth to Athena.
okay.
Yeah. So, the stone also that was like
Hold on a
substituted for.
second. Like just minor sidebar that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But J.K. Rowling made Athena like her like figure or whatever on her website about hating trans people when her dad is the one that gave birth to her.
Yeah. I mean, he's also very credited with Dionysus's birth. That one, there's much more clearly a mother, but
She's just so stupid.
yeah, he's treated like a god who could give birth himself. So, yes. When he threw up the stone, though, this was like a weird little detail. The stone was set up as a shrine in Delphi, and they would like pour libations and oil it and stuff. The stone that was supposedly regurgitated.
Ew.
Yeah. Um, so the Olympians decided they were going to take up rule, but the Titans resisted. Prometheus ends up on the Olympian side, mostly because he was trying to actually help the Titans at first. At
Mhm.
least this is the Prometheus bound version where he's, got a lot of anger and angst because he's about to be tied up and his
Yeah.
liver fed to an eagle.
Rest in
But
peace, his liver.
yeah, but he says that he was trying to tell the Titans that this war isn't going to be won by like strength. It needs to be won by wisdom or guile, and they weren't listening to him. So he finally joined Zeus's side because he's like, okay, at least this guy's going to listen to me. They battled for 10 years before Zeus finally got a prophecy that actually helped them because they were making no progress in this war. And the prophecy came from Gaia, who, like, I mean, it's hard to figure out why she told him considering what ends up happening.
Hmm.
The reason people mostly attribute her helping him out in the Titan War is because she was mad that Uranus locked up some of their children in Tartarus, those children being the Hundred Handers
Hmm.
and the Cyclopes. And so she was like, you know, Zeus, to win this, you gotta free my children. And so he slays Campy, who was out and guarding them, and we got the hundred handers, Codus, Gaius, and Briareus, which I that's Briares from Percy Jackson. I
Mm-hmm.
just his actual name is Briareus. Um, and the Cyclopes that end up getting freed, I believe there's also three of them. They end up helping to make, very famous weapons, those being the Master Bolt, the
Mm-hmm.
Trident for Poseidon, and the Helm of Darkness for Hades. So it was the addition of the Hundred Handers being on the Olympian side, plus having those divine weapons that helped them win the war. So from going on like 10 years of nothing happening, which like it just sounds like the Trojan War all over again, thinking about it that way,
Mm-hmm.
to having these children of Uranus and Gaia suddenly helping. The Hundred Handers are able to overwhelm the Titans with like throwing rocks like projectiles. They are just spamming projectiles at them. Like, I made this joke in my story, like a little kid playing Smash Bros for the first time when they find out their character can shoot something. They're just like pressing the button over and over and over again, and you can't do anything because you're like stuck being hurt. Um, Basically, that's like what they did to the Titans. And Zeus was hurling down his thunderbolts, which was scorching Gaia. And this is why I'm like, I don't understand her helping them because, like, yes, Girly was mad that her children got locked up. Uranus supposedly locked up. One translation put it like he was jealous of their manliness and how handsome they were. The actual word used was their like shape or form, which I think is just supposed to be he was jealous that they're kind of formidable, like
Mm-hmm.
looking at them. But the idea that he's jealous that they're like more handsome is funnier.
Yeah, he's like, damn,
um,
they're too sexy.
yeah, gotta lock him up. Can't they gotta put him in Tartarus? So, yeah, like just helping those guys is what saves them. Briareus, like, it makes a lot more sense now why Titan or why can't I speak today? Why Tyson was so obsessed with him. It was like, you're the
Mm-hmm.
best, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's really sad thinking about because wasn't the explanation for where Gaius and Codus went was that like they just kind of gave up on themselves?
Yeah, they were in Tartarus. They just kind of couldn't stop believing that anyone was ever going to save them, and I mean, Briares did too. He just like got kidnapped basically, but he had like zero hope that he was ever going to get away to the point that he was scared to try.
Hmm.
But it was something like that where they, even though the Cyclops were still believing in them, they didn't believe so much in themselves that they just like disappeared basically.
Yeah.
Is kind of how they put it.
So Gaia helps because she wants her children freed, supposedly, but at the same time, like if she had the wherewithal, the like fortune telling ability to foresee that her children being freed would turn the war, wouldn't she also have the fortune telling ability to see that Zeus was going to scorch the hell out of her land? Like, because I mean, she ends up getting mad and turning on him, and that leads to the war with the giants led by Gaia. But
I feel like she
yeah.
was like, is it worth it for my land to get ruined if it means that Kronos gets to lose? And she was like, yeah, let's just do it. I think she just decided it'd be worth it in that moment just to feel like great and just ignore all the other things that Zeus would do after that exact second of his life.
Yeah. So while they were in this war, Zeus had promised anyone who fights on my side, I'm going to make your duties official if you already have them. If you don't have them, I'm going to give you some. So like that's the
Mm-hmm.
way he set up his own little like his own pantheon. And so he was helped out by really the only Titans on his side were Prometheus and Prometheus's mom. But he also was helped out. One that they point out is like Iris. And Iris had a twin named Archie who actually stayed on the Titan side. And one thing that they were very specific about was like her punishment for this was getting her wings cut off.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Pan was also on Zeus's side. So, anyways, the Olympians win the war after, like Zeus has his master bolt to scorch everything, and the Hecatonchires, however you say that, I just say hundred handers,
Mm-hmm.
um, like literally just block them out with boulders. And Athena, Apollo, and Artemis are the ones that then help Zeus take the Titans down to Tartarus. They chain them down there. Poseidon is the one who makes bronze gates around it so that they can't get out, and they're then guarded by the hundred handers. So it's kind of like a reversal happens there. Um, let's see. And yeah, like eventually Gaia ends up mad at Zeus again, so her flip-flopping is part of the story that I don't think anyone's made a lot of sense of. I'm kind of curious what Rick ends up doing with it because it seems like he goes from the Titan War in this last book to, like the Giant War in the next series with having Gaia be kind of the big bad. So I'm kind of curious, like, how he interprets her motive
Mm-hmm.
eventually.
I honestly don't remember. That's the fun of
Hmm.
me reading these books again. I honestly don't remember what. All I remember about Gaia is that she's a scarier villain in Heroes of Olympus,
Hmm.
because she's literally like the earth. And
Yeah.
so there's parts when like literally the ground, like the earth just starts attacking them. Like,
Yeah.
in one of those books, Percy gets really scared after that point of drowning. And he's, of course, like tearing himself apart about,
Hmm.
like, how am I like the son of Poseidon, but I'm afraid of drowning. But it's because it is actually a really scary thing, but she like basically like drops him into like the earth. And
Oh
he's like
gosh.
drowning in there, even though there's no water, but he's still drowning
Hmm.
from like the dirt and things like that, and it's really scary, and his like other friends have to help him out of there. But and so it is like a scary thing of like she's the entire earth, and which is why most of the book series they're on a boat
Hmm.
on the water, because it's like she can't get them when they're on the boat at least, and they just every time they go on land it's like dangerous because they don't know where she could attack them, because she could attack them anywhere, because she just seems like bigger than Kronos somehow, even though Kronos was still obviously a really good villain.
Hmm.
But it's just done very differently, I guess, is the best way to put that. But I don't remember anything else about her besides that. And just the fact that Percy like empathizes with why she originally could have been upset, because that's just like what he does. But
Hmm.
that's always like the good thing about Percy Jackson villains, is that you usually like understand like where their starting point was, but even
Yeah.
if their end point is like out of this world.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
either
with
way.
Gaia, I mean, unfortunately, she is a victim. Like, that is
Mm-hmm.
the thing. Like, if there's old pictures, old drawings of this where Uranus, like, literally was forcing himself on her. And,
Oh yeah.
like, she was not able to give birth at all. So that's our starting point of her story, is just, like, being, like, what's the word for birth control abuse? And, like,
Yeah.
also, yeah, like there's birth control abuse, there's sexual assault, like, and so her story starts with that, but then when she starts producing kids that are considered so monstrous that they just get locked away, it's like, what is all of this for? So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I could see Percy empathizing with her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the only like author that tries to give a reasonable explanation for why Gaia ended up giving Zeus the prophecy of like this is how you win was one author said that Zeus before battle gave a one bull each to Gaia, Uranus, and Oceanus. So like kind of covering land, sea, sky.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how the prophecy got bestowed upon him. Um, wait, Uranus did something at that point. I wrote it down. Oh, he also got a an omen of an eagle at that point, which is where that comes from being his symbol
Mm-hmm.
when he did the sacrifice, which like the eagle specifically showing up is attributed to Uranus. So, Yeah, like that's the only person who tried to connect the dots in ancient literature to say like this is why she even gave him the prophecy, but it's and I get her being mad her kids were imprisoned, but like it's just so hard for me to see you have the foresight to see how this battle is going to be won. You
Hmm.
have you have the foresight to see you're going to be utterly destroyed in the process. How worth it is it? And I don't think it was just showing up Kronos. I think it was also showing up Uranus again of just like, yeah, you can't take them from me.
Hmm. I said it was lazy writing when you told me, but I was like, yeah, those
Yeah.
writers back then weren't always really on the ball.
This is one where you have to wonder if we had some of the oral traditions, if there would
Hmm.
be like actual reasons that make sense or that connect the dots at least.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's like the fun of it all, like things of like it's fascinating for me to think about like how if we somebody just wrote down or like reread like thousands of years ago somebody read a word wrong or like
Hmm.
there was like a slang word but we don't know what that slang word means anymore and it could like completely misconstrue everything they were trying to say in this like runaway train sort of way that we would never be able to stop. Like I always think about that like thousands of years from now, where people going to think that we did really weird things that we're not doing because of something left by us and having no way of knowing that they got it wrong, because we always get like little things wrong.
Yeah.
That's just like the fun of it. But that's like the fun of these stories, is that you never can be completely sure that we have it right, and so there probably was stuff that explains some of that stuff better, but we just don't know what it is because it probably didn't survive. It either didn't survive when it was written down or nobody ever wrote it down.
Yeah, most of what we know about this war comes from Hesiod's Theogony. And like a little bit of it came from Prometheus Bound from me reading it. Um, but everything else, it's like it's barely mentioned. And so we don't have individual things like this is what Artemis and Apollo were doing. We can imagine they were shooting arrows at people with their bows. Or, like this is what Hephaestus's contribution was, and we don't
Mm-hmm.
have it so specific like that, which I think is the kind of like again, if we're gonna adapt this stuff, somebody get on that. Somebody have all of them doing their roles the most efficiently. That would be really cool. But yeah, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit of that because it's all hands on deck in the next book, right? It's demigods and gods,
Everyone, demigods, gods, titans, everything,
monsters.
everything, and yeah, everything at the most extreme. Like I told you, like I showed you, like the cover of the book, which is just Percy on blackjack, while like this New York City is just like burning behind him.
Hmm.
Like that, like the last book, or like just remember what I remember about it. People like every time it's kind of like a funny game. Every time they ever interview like the cast and talk about like, oh, what's your favorite this, what's your favorite that, whatever, Walker always talks about the last Olympian, and he
Hmm.
talks about like how he wants to be able to like fight in like fight scenes and stuff by the time they get to the last Olympian, even though it's obviously not renewed or anything up to that point or anything. But it's
Hmm.
because the last Olympian is so huge and just like this gigantic battle that
Yeah.
just keeps going and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, that you just like cannot, you can't help but like think about it once you remember it. You just think about it all the time, like, oh my god, how this is going to be like the coolest thing ever. But like how are they gonna film this? Like it's gonna be really wild, like really intense, but it is just like huge battles. Like I
Hmm.
know I mentioned this when we first started doing the podcast, because I was talking about one of the differences between like Luke and Percy, where in the first book Luke is talking about like, oh, the rest of humanity that doesn't join me is gonna like die or go back to the caves or whatever, and being a little freak about eugenics or whatever. But in like the last book, in the last Olympian, some of the stuff that like makes them be like, okay, we have to end this now, is the fact that like the humans in New York City and stuff are being affected by what they're doing. And
Yeah.
they're like, no, that, no, 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 no. We're not having like regular human people that haven't done anything wrong. They just happen to exist near where we are. If they're in danger, then we have to do this now, and we have to end it. Um, I feel like when one like even though like it's way too soon to talk about like side characters, the one like line that I saw once on somewhere that I'm like, "Oh my God, I need like some background character to say this even if they're never like named as the characters." But the Stoll brothers in that, there's like one part where they're walking by and Percy hears them say like, "What do you mean that we set like grenades on the wrong hill?" And there's another part where they're just like stealing stuff from a convenience store and somebody asks them why and they're like, because we can. It's like the middle of an end of everyone's life battle, and they're like, but let's go steal some shit
Let's
because
go
we're
loot.
because we're Hermes children, and so we would want to do stuff like that just to see it, just because we can and we can get away with it.
Yeah.
But that's why like everyone always talks about the Last Olympian whenever anything happens, especially on the show, because you just can't help thinking about it because that's where it's all gonna end one day. And you're like, oh my God, I just want to see this. Or just like now that I can like actually imagine like what that would actually kind of look like, which is just wild.
So we did want to talk about some show stuff. One of the
Ease.
first things that I want to bring up, just because it came up again with like an official picture coming out of Walker at the start of filming of every season, is
Yeah.
people are talking about the age stuff again. And I had a
Jesus
thought. I
Christ.
left this in Sophia's comments, and I was like, wait, this is actually a brilliant thought because, like, why are we caring so much about how much Walker grows? Because, like, even if he got a foot taller between seasons, they are supernatural demigod children. Like, I
Yeah.
think people forget about that.
I will say that it is weirdly like only men. Like
Yeah.
so far, it's like I call them like bros, like the dude bros of the internet that make videos on here and YouTube and otherwise that will just like that are fixated on these things. Like this one guy, he was like I could tell he was like attempting to be like lighthearted or whatever, but when he saw the picture, instead of just being like, wow, he's like grown up and he looks a lot older. That's really cool that we're getting to see him like grow up as he plays this role. Instead, he started talking about like, oh, this show thought that they were going to cast these kids so they would be age appropriate, and then like puberty attacks and never mind. And I was just like, why do you think that the thing that I always just like cannot ever get over is that perfect strangers think that it's appropriate to discuss a child's puberty ever.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Like, why are you talking about that? Like, he's a kid, and people have like deleted the fact that the actors and writers and directors strike happened in whatever year that was, 2023.
Hmm.
But that did exist, guys. And
Yeah.
that was basically an entire, like, that was essentially an entire year of like development because even after the writer's strike was over, they had to redo all of their contracts and stuff. And I just kind of assumed at the time that they didn't renew season two until season one was completely finished because of stuff like that. They would have to like redo everyone's contract and all that kind of stuff. And so
Yeah.
like if that stuff hadn't been going on, like season one stopped filming at like the end of February of 2023. The
Hmm.
writer's strike started in like June, and it wasn't just the writers, it was everybody. So no one was allowed to like do anything at all. And like I remember Rick said after it was over that they did like a couple like, kind of like outlining the episodes and stuff like that. Some things a little bit before it hit or before all the strikes happened. But the strike didn't end until like way later in the year. Like the kids couldn't even go to like Comic-Con or
Hmm.
any of those sort of things. Like, remember last year they were really excited to go because they missed it during the first season because of all the strikes happening. And
Yeah.
so, like, literally nothing at all could happen. And then it was like, well, the show's coming out in December. And so the show is like, season two is, at least, is set still in the summertime. And so it would be like worthless to try to like start production and stuff when it wouldn't start filming until the summertime, most likely. And so it took like a whole year basically for them to do it again, but they're likely not going to do that ever again.
Yeah.
Like they stopped filming in the first week of February this year, and 6 months later they're filming season three. Like
Yeah.
they not only like were renewed, they renewed and wrote enough episodes to start filming and cast like a bunch of new characters that are all going to be in the first episode, and did a month of like boot camp already, and now they're already filming. And so they were like on it. Like they had people already doing in-person tryouts for Nico with Walker in May.
Hmm.
That was 3 months after they stopped filming, and like a month and a half after they got renewed by Disney.
Yeah.
And so it was like they want to film as much as they can while without being like crazy about it.
Yeah.
But they will do that. They'll continue doing that because I have a hard time believing that this season won't be like much better than every other season. Like this seems like a show that will get better as it goes on because they just get better at playing their characters, and the show knows how to handle things better, just like production wise and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It is just like overly aggravating though every time how people bring that up with him,
Yeah.
because I it wouldn't bother me as much. The thing that's always bothered me the most about this whole thing with him is that he talks about it. And
Yeah.
I hate that's why I hate it. Like if it would always bother me that people, even people his own, like kids his own age, feel like they can like comment on things like that when he's just being a person.
Hmm.
Like the last thing a child actor needs is more people commenting on their body because they have that happen all the time. They don't need it, and they don't need
Yeah.
more voices than normal, and especially like puberty and all that kind of stuff. Nobody likes that. It's weird. It's awkward for everyone, much less when like millions of people are perceiving you at the exact same time. And
Hmm.
feeling like you just existing as a human being is somehow ruining a giant multi-billion-dollar production. Like that's already ridiculous. But when him and like Ariane at Comic Con are mentioning in interviews, they're like, "Oh, we were worried about us taking too long to film season two too because we don't want there to be like a bunch of 20-year-olds running around." And I was like, "These are kids. They're not like exempt from anything." And
Yeah.
like some of the stuff I wanted to talk about that was fun about Comic Con is just Walker especially is very aware of
Yeah.
like fandom stuff, like who the fandom likes and who they don't like, and things like that. And so like they see what we say because you can't, like it's one of those things like you can't pretend like those comments like that they didn't read them and internalize them, even though yeah, those kids wanted to go back and start filming again because they loved doing it and
Hmm.
they didn't want to be gone for that long, and they want to keep doing a good job. And like yeah, Walker is a ridiculous perfectionist who at the age of like 12, when he was originally trying out, was worried that he was too old because he was going to turn 13 by the time they would start filming, and he thought he was too old. And so there was always that bit, but it's like, okay, do you need to make it worse though?
Yeah.
Because honestly, the fact that he's filming Titan's Curse right now and he is 16 and Percy is 14 in that season is so ridiculously close in age.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm always like losing grip with reality, that there are people that are like, he's too old. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like
Yeah.
most of the time they're like 25 years old, or even like the Stranger Things kids look ridiculous pretending like they're still in high school or however old their characters are supposed to be.
Yeah, those shots also I've seen this week of people showing season one to season five because I
Yeah.
believe this is supposed to be the last season, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, people have shown a side by side. It hasn't supposed to have been that long between the seasons, if I remember correctly. I've only watched each of the seasons one time
Hmm.
through, and Stranger Things seems like the kind of show you need to watch more than once to really understand.
Hmm.
Um, so, I'm not the biggest Stranger Things fan. I'll probably watch the last season, but not binge it the same way everybody else does when Netflix drops something.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, I hate doing that. Netflix is annoying. Um,
mhm,
I don't know if I'll watch it. I might watch it, but it really depends on if people like the ending.
yeah.
Um, I don't like watching. I sometimes will like wait if something is like currently airing to see if people like the ending before wanting to watch it because of how many times I don't like the ending of things in like the
Yeah.
past and things like that. But I think you sent me something too about how the new season for Wednesday came out, and people were making comments the same about Joe
Yes.
Locke. Um,
Pugsley, yeah. So her brother, it's very visible how much the kid has grown because it's been 3 years between filming.
yeah.
And it's just like those teenage years, kids grow so much. William is 12 and he went to go spend a week with his grandparents. He comes back and it's like a whole new kid. And Walker, those two shots, like especially the two newest ones, season two and season three, the difference looks like a haircut, and on boys, especially young boys, with the right haircut, they look like a year older every time you cut their hair. And it's like, oh my gosh, wait, you look so big. No.
He looks pretty much the same from last year to this year. Like there's
Yeah.
little differences probably if you like
There
knew
was a
him in
lighting
person.
difference too.
Yeah, if you like knew him in person or something, you would probably notice that stuff, but it's nothing like noticeable where people would notice. I just hated the fact that it was like some kind of thing that they were all talking about because like Aryan mentioned like, oh yeah, this the people who interviewed them were asking about like growing up and puberty and stuff, and I was like, what is going on where journalists are asking about how kids like child actors puberty was going, or like
Hmm.
if that affected the show, like what is wrong with people? but
Yeah.
but in that interview, like Aryan said something about like everyone looks the same except for one person, and I was just like, is this necessary? Like, and
Yeah.
that's not at Aryan, but it's just the fact that he has to like say that kind of stuff to like defend Walker when he's not even there, because it was an interview where it was him and Dior talking, and like the YouTube video that we mentioned that Dior did with the eating the sour candy thing, like
Hmm.
she said, she's like Aryan looks really different too, from season one to this season. He looked like he was like a little baby in season one,
Yeah.
and he looks way more grown up now, and like so she was saying like it's not just Walker that looks different. And I was like,
Hmm.
thank God, because can we stop talking about this?
Well, by the time we get to season five, Charlie is going to look different. And it's
Yeah.
because guys go through, I call it second puberty, but I remember with Jake, like, because we were dating when Jake, we were like well into dating when Jake went through it, but we started dating when we were 19. And then after we had William, which we were 22, I want to say like a year or two after, all of a sudden he had shoulders. And it was
Hmm.
just like, why are you bulky now? Like you weren't bulky before. Wow. Where did that come from?
That will
It,
work
yeah.
for like Luke's advantage,
Yes.
because it will just make him look scarier in the later seasons when he is doing like even more evil things than normal.
Yes.
So that will be good because he's supposed to be like at the scariest level, and Charlie's also weirdly obsessed with boxing. So I'm sure, so I'm
Yeah.
sure he'll look even creepier and stuff like that. I just want Hollywood, somebody, anyone, literally Hollywood in general, to get the idea that you should never talk about children's bodies unless you want me to think that you're predatory. Do you want me to think that? Then otherwise shut the fuck up. Because like not to make this like a serious thing, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like the whole idea that people comment on children's puberty and they ask about it and they feel like they're warranted to ask about it, where they're talking about it in these public things because it just comes up all the time and they just feel like they can talk about it because it's like a point of like discussion about whatever. That's just like connected to the idea that people feel like they can do whatever they want with children's bodies.
Yeah.
Like that's where all of that stuff comes from. When you don't feel like kids are their own people and you feel like you can just use them however you want, that's why kids get abused. So stop doing that, please.
Yeah.
God.
And there are some kids that just really don't like this period of life. Like William definitely doesn't love that he's growing rapidly again. He's like, this is a lot of change all at once. I don't exactly love it. Like,
Oh
and
yeah.
I know he's gonna get to the point where his voice starts cracking too, and he's not gonna love that.
But it's just a thing of that they're used to people probably asking them questions about things like that overall, that it like just they just started talking about it because it's just something that they're used to talking about, and they likely don't see anything wrong with talking about it,
Hmm.
even if people like us as adults are like, yeah, adults shouldn't be asking you those sort of questions, or like fans shouldn't be debating about that on Reddit
Yeah. It's
and
so
other
weird.
and like TikTok and every other social media platform, where you feel where you're just like where that's just like in your mind and you're just going to talk about it so that people don't bring it up later, or you just like bring it up right away. It's just one of those things that like happens to every child actor in some way. People always start talking about what they look like in a way that is always over the line in some
Yeah.
way, in some shape or form. And it's literally just I don't like the fact that they're real children. That's
Yeah.
all it is like, oh, this kid is like growing. I have to actually acknowledge the fact that they're a human being and that they're going to grow like every other child. Like that's what it's like every time. For every like child actor out there, there's always that time when they grow start like showing that they're growing up and
Hmm.
they can't like cover it up as much with whatever.
Yeah.
And that always becomes this weird thing every time that sort of thing happens. It's frustrating. And these kids are like obviously child actors. I do think that they're treated a lot better on their set than a lot of other sets on in Hollywood.
Hmm.
But it still is like a thing that they have to contend with because they're still part of this industry that
Yeah.
does just talk about kids that way. But I'm just like, oh my god, I just want things to come out about this show without people like immediately going to that being like a point of discussion, I guess. Like
Yeah.
I want to hear Walker talk in an interview without the top comment on the video being about how much his voice has changed.
Yeah.
And just about literally what he's actually saying. Like what about what is he actually talking about? Like
Yeah.
could we focus on that instead?
Part of
Cuz he's
yeah, part of why he got chosen for this role is because he's a huge Percy fan. It's because
mhm.
he's a part of the fandom and like that he has Percy energy. Like we all talk about it how we feel like he even knows more about Percy than Rick sometimes.
Oh yeah. Cuz
So listening
like
to him in interviews is amazing.
yeah, and it's that's why I always want someone to just ask him things about Percy and the world just to talk about it instead of it being like from him as an actor because he would probably have a lot of interesting stuff to say like a lot of us do when we start talking about that stuff. But like when he was at like the thing, the Monster Donut thing they had, the installation thing at Comic-Con, he did like the test and he got Poseidon.
Hmm.
And that was just like him doing the test for himself. And he was like, oh my God, I'm so shocked that I got Poseidon. That's like me whenever I do one of those quizzes and I get Poseidon. I'm like, this is my shocked face
Yeah.
that I got Poseidon. I always get Poseidon because I know that I'm a Poseidon child. I know that I'm like Percy. That's the end of that story. That it's not surprising that I got that. But to talk about that one, this one interview they did at Comic Con, it was really entertaining to watch the video clips from it. But it was also interesting because it shows like how aware at least Walker is of like what people in the fandom like and don't like or whatever. Because it was this fun interview that came out after Comic Con was over, and it was like a Family Feud style thing. And like Walker and Leah are so young that they didn't even know what Family Feud was.
Oh,
Which
jeez.
I was like, yeah. Afterwards, I was like, yeah, you guys wouldn't. You were so little that you didn't grow up like seeing like reruns of that creepy man who hosted it back in the day, being inappropriate with women.
Oh yeah, I always forget about that host.
Yeah, well, I remember me and my sister when we were teenagers, we were just like, "What's going on with this guy?"
Yeah.
And we're asking my mom like, "Was this normal back then?" And she's like, "No, he was different." But either way, it's like that style where it was Walker, Leah, and Daniel. So
Hmm.
two really big Percy Jackson fans because Daniel's also a really big Percy Jackson fan, and Charlie, Arian, and Dior, I think, in the like a separate room, and they were trying to guess like the top 10 most popular demigods on like the Percy Jackson like Wikipedia. I forget what we call it. There's always like a fun like punny like fandom name, but whatever we call it. And so like Percy was first, like Annabeth was third, and it was interesting as they go through like naming the ones they basically named, Percy, Annabeth, Clarice, and like second slot was open, and they're like, who would be second? And Walker's like, oh, Nico, or no, he didn't say Nico, he said Luke, and he's
Hmm.
like, Luke's got to be like number two, and Luke was like number six, and he was like, "What?" And like in the other room, Arian, of course, was like making fun of Charlie for being like lower on the list. But it just shows like he sees how much people talk about Luke because he was generally like surprised that
Hmm.
he wasn't one of the top ones. And
Yeah.
then they remembered that Nico was second. The funniest part, I think, well, no. The second funniest part was they could not figure out who was fourth, and it was Will. And I was like, that's just because of shipping reasons. And like his face when they said it was Will, he was like, no.
Or is Will Solace?
Oh my, he's not, no.
He was like, that can't be right. Can like out of everybody, it's Will? And that is like I would never have guessed him either because I don't care about him and Nico. I'm not like a teenager that's shipping that couple. But they were trying to think of the other ones that they couldn't remember. And this game was like rigged against him because he actually knows about this stuff. And so Zoe was in it. And it was really funny when they were trying to remember it because Leah started literally asking Jesus for help.
Jesus.
Think.
No, I'm like, Jesus, like, I need help.
The host is like, oh, Leah said something before. And she was like, what? I got something right. How is that possible?
Leah has mentioned a correct answer.
What?
Yes. That you guys have not locked in. But
And they said like Zoe, and Zoe was up there. And Walker, of course, had an embolism as he should because Zoe isn't a demigod. And he was like, but Zoe's not a demigod. Like, how is she? And like the host was literally like, she was on the list of the top. Like she was just trying to like justify putting her on there because she's not a demigod. I'm like Zoe's number one fan, but she's not like, and he was saying all the point, like he was like, her dad is Atlas. Like she's not a demigod.
She's kind of technically a Titaness.
And so then this
But
is the part when he like lost his mind and like the videos of it were funny, but I was like, yeah, this would have, if I was on this show, this would have been my face. And because he was like, okay, then what about, and he was trying to remember Calypso, but he couldn't remember Calypso's name, and Daniel remembered Calypso, and he was like, Calypso. And Daniel starts saying, like, Calypso's not a demigod, and the host says she's not a demigod, and he's like, then why is Zoe a demigod?
I think Calypso is a
She's not a demigod.
demigod.
No. Yeah.
Don't lock it in. Guys, you really have
And, like, he was just like, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like, he, like, had to just, like, stop from there, because he was just like, I'm exhausted. And I was like, you know what? I would be exhausted, too, because they're sisters. How is one of them a demigod, but the other one is not? This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense at all. But either way, that interview, how he talked about the different characters, I'm like, yeah, he knows about because one of the other things in that interview was that Selena wasn't on that list. And he was like, I can't believe that Selena isn't on this list. And I was like, yeah, I can't believe that she's not on this list either. You guys leaked dailies on the internet in the name of Selena, and you don't even like her enough to go to her Wikipedia? For her to be one of the top 10 demigods? Do you really like her that much if you don't go to her page on Wikipedia often enough for that to happen? Like, but it was just, he's very aware of what we talk about, because his guesses were actually pretty accurate to what we talk about the most. It's just that people just aren't, like, real, I guess.
yeah.
But either way, that whole part of him being like, he looked like he was about to, like, fall over when the host was trying to justify why Zoe was on the list and Calypso wasn't. It was like that thing of, like, I can't speak right now because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I was like, this poor child. And I don't even know if, like, Charlie and them figured any of them out, because they barely showed them at a certain point, because Daniel and him and Leah were so funny at trying to remember them, and then, like, getting them, and then being, like, flabbergasted by getting them wrong.
I love it.
That was just really funny. But I was like, yeah, you guys are, like, really, they're very aware of what we talk about. If he's surprised that, I mean, if you don't want Walker to be surprised that Luke is not the number 2 demigod of all time underneath Percy, then stop fucking talking about Luke so much. At least not in a positive way, I guess I'll say that.
Yeah.
Okay. But some of the other things, I listened to the Seaweed Brain podcast and the Monster Donut podcast. They had interviews at Comic-Con that I listened to their episodes today. I will say the Newest Olympian also put up some videos on their channel, which was funny. Their first video was just really funny because I think the host Mike really likes the New York Knicks. I'm messing that up. There's a basketball team that he really likes that one of the showrunners doesn't like, and they're like a big rival of them. And his first question was him just reading off stats about how much the other team sucks. Literally, that was the entire first question. And the guy and what the showrunner was like, "This is why you came here, isn't it? This is why you paid money to fly here just to do this." And so you should go watch it because that's just funny anyway. But some of the things they talked about in those interviews was Daniel always gave really good answers. Watching him and Walker is really nice because he's very much like his actual big brother. And he is I'm sure he was like everyone's big brother on set. Like, remember Leah saying that like he was really funny on set, and there's these pictures of him like holding like Leah's like purse, like one of her really expensive like fashion like Coach purses or whatever those purses are that are like bright pink, and he's like wearing his Camp Half Blood shirt, just like walking around set wearing like holding it. And she made some comment when she posted the picture like, I might as well just give him my purse because it's not really mine anymore, because he would walk around wearing it all the time. And I'm like, yeah, this is exactly the kind of person that should be on this set all the time with these kids, is like an actual adult that's like there to like help like calm everybody down and like relax when things get probably a little intense, because this is an intense sort of show to act on. Because all the kids are always going through all this stuff.
Kind of like how Jeanette McCurdy talks about the guy who played Spencer on iCarly.
Yeah, or like today I started listening to the Allison Stoner, her podcast that she did called Dear Hollywood, because her memoir came out today, and I asked her on Instagram, and somebody actually responded to me and said that there's like an author's note with like trigger warnings and stuff with like what chapters have different triggers in them. And so I don't know, I could like actually read her entire like memoir in full, because there's a lot of really triggering stuff in general for me, but I at least want to know like what she talks about, because she's such a good advocate for child actors. But she talked about that she talked about how there was, I forget who it was, but I think it was like an acting coach kind of person that she met when she was like a teenager, that like she told the story that when her ego was like getting to her, where she was like trying to not have to do what everyone else had to do when she was getting ready for production, he was like, no, you have to do it just like everybody else does. And he was kind of like turned into like her dad figure, because she talked about how like her family moved to LA for her career, and her dad didn't move with them. He stayed back in Ohio where she's from, and so she never really saw her dad for like many years when she was basically the whole time she was growing up. And so he was kind of like that dad figure for her on sets and stuff, that would like talk to her and just make her feel better and things like that when everything was really overwhelming. And so it's always nice to see like child actors have people like that are especially when they're like built in to be part of the cast. Like Daniels was in like basically every scene with Walker essentially, except for when he thought he was dead for a couple episodes, or an episode and a half or something probably. But other than that, he was pretty much always around, which just makes it easier.
What was it like for you guys creating like this brotherly bond on screen?
It's really easy.
Yeah. I mean, I think we both approach the work very similarly, which is such a huge part of it. And I think we both love the characters and the story enough that really bonded us from the beginning. Outside of that, again, he's one of my favorite human beings on the planet. He cares about his people as much as Percy does. He is a protector. He's a leader. He shows up on set. He's prepared. He's ready to like conquer the world, and he never puts his foot like out of step. He's also very sarcastic, which I love. And so on a Disney production, it allows me to feel free to relax myself more, which is great. But no, it was so easy. And again, hopefully, I think from the way that you've talked about it so far, it seems like it was pretty mutual, which is good.
100%.
Yeah.
But he's also apparently a writer. I looked him up to see what he's written because he always gives very thoughtful answers whenever he would give an answer. And he co-wrote a short story so far, but other than that has talked about wanting to write like more things, which I hope he does because
Yeah.
he's just seems like a empathetic person just from the answers he was giving about things. Because one of the things in one of the interviews on Seaweed Brain and other interviews I saw from him too is he was mentioning how Tyson's homeless and has led like a very like traumatic life before he gets introduced into the show. And so he said like I wanted to include like that part of his life too, but he's like obviously not go too much with it because this is for kids, but that also is things that he went through, and he said they came up with like a good balance. But I just of like having Tyson be like Tyson how you picture him in the books, but also having gone through all this really hard stuff. And it's like, yeah, he was homeless in the books before he ever found Percy, and he was living like that for like many years, and Percy was the only one that saw him doing that and was like, do you need help of some kind?
Yeah.
But other than that, he was just kind of left there. And there was like a comment in that interview with Seaweed Brain that they, I think, or Monster Donut, they were all interviewing together, but it was just their individual questions they were showing. They mentioned, one of them mentioned how Daniel talked about like his relationship with Poseidon and stuff. And Walker mentioned that at the beginning of the season, Percy's relationship with Poseidon is like okay. But he like cut himself off because he was like, it's hard to answer any of these questions without spoiling anything. But it just like gave you the implication, which there should be that implication that later on in the season, that he won't be happy with Poseidon anymore, which like he shouldn't. But like the way he talked about it was like the beginning of the season, like he went back to school and like spent like a year in like normal school, like in New York City instead of far away where he was like living at home with his mom, and he had Tyson around and things were like okay. Like, you know, when you think about like Percy, like he has like a place at camp, people at camp seem to like him. The whole Luke stuff is obviously awful, but otherwise people at camp like him. He gets along with people, he has friends now, everything seems to be okay. And like Walker brought up in the interview that like he never answers Percy's question when he asks him like, do you dream of my mom? He just like sent him like crashing back down to earth and never answered that question. And he does bring up the fact that he, you know, never really answered it, but he also brought him back to camp. Like his mom does make it home and everything.
Yeah.
So you can see how Percy in that place would be like as okay as he could be about Poseidon, because he did get like a nice place to go now where he feels accepted and stuff because of Poseidon. But then of course, like literally everything that happens in this season changes all of that. Like Tyson being his brother, kids at camp turning against him, Luke stabbing everybody, and just everything else that happens, just, you know, like even Tyson being claimed like immediately. He doesn't like that was one thing in the book that I liked, was that he doesn't understand like why Poseidon did that, because he doesn't actually like bother to like talk to him and explain to him why until the very end of the book. And so the whole rest of the book, he just feels like his dad likes his brother more than him and is like telling Tyson things and sending Tyson to him, and even like he finds out at the end of the book and is doing all these things, and like Tyson is going to go work with him, but he's like just here, and Poseidon isn't coming to him and talking to him and telling him anything at all. That's one of the things with Poseidon that I think is really interesting with the show, is that when they showed the flashbacks of him and Sally, everybody wanted to like everybody wanted to like Poseidon, but I was like, I still really don't like you though. Like, this is good because it shows him as a more like well-rounded person than you really get in the books and stuff, but I don't forgive you.
Yeah.
Like, especially for like Sally and stuff. Like, I don't forgive you for doing this with her. And
Yeah, she was 19 doing it on her own.
yeah, and you knew. Like, there's no way that he didn't know that that would happen to her. And especially like you thought Sally was the best, and so you put her in the middle of your shitstorm with your brother that is like a murderous little baby and wants to kill everyone. Like, he knew that when he did that and brought that kid into that world, what they would be up against for their entire life. And that there would never be anything that kid could do that would ever make Zeus or the other gods feel happy or like satisfied or okay with him. And he like chose to bring him into the world anyway. And it's like, what is wrong with you, sir?
Yeah.
And then on top of like whatever other stuff happens during like the season and stuff, or the books, it doesn't help any of that. But that's just like the basis of like, yeah, Sally shouldn't have had to go through all of that completely alone. And Percy definitely shouldn't have had to deal with all of that stuff just because you thought Sally was a cool girl or whatever reason you had for it. Like, no matter how much they try to make like romanticize that or like make you see them as more like real characters, like I'm glad that they are, but there's always that part of it that I like just cannot get over it.
Yeah, for Teen Mom fans, because like I've been not rewatching Teen Mom, but like, so there's this one YouTube creator, Fat Sajak, that like she's been doing a Teen Mom rewatch, so you're watching it with her commentary. But there's one Teen Mom that like it's almost the way that people are romanticizing the Sally Percy stuff with having him show up multiple times in the show, where one of the teen moms in season 2, Chelsea, her baby daddy, she was stuck on him for so long. It's like 3 seasons of, oh, he cheated on me again, and like her going back to him, and it's this off and on cycle that is emotionally abusive. And the guy, like, because you end 16 and pregnant, her 16 and pregnant episode ended with him saying, I wish you would have aborted that mistake. And she kept going back to this dude. And like, he never stepped up as a father. Maybe at times his family took their daughter, like sometimes, but it was her doing it, like either her by herself or like her parents helped her out a lot. And that's kind of what it, like, Poseidon did to Sally when you really think about it, not contributing a single cent, no child support to speak of, not even contributing the right type of wisdom to raise a child that's dealing with as much as Percy is.
Yeah, and Sally didn't have any family. Like, her family died. And so it's like she had absolutely no one and had the absolute hardest path you could possibly, like, really imagine somebody having.
Yeah.
Even without, like, all of the other stuff going on, that would have been really difficult. Just with, like, without mystical, magical things going on. Just being in that situation with having to raise a kid literally completely alone because everyone who could have helped you as your support system died already. And the person who did it is like a mysterious god that will be around long enough to get you pregnant but won't stay around to do anything else. I mean, Medusa, I'm not going to like Poseidon that much. I'm never going to like Poseidon that much. That's why I'm a Poseidon child, because I don't like him that much. That's like part of the rules. Okay, so some of the other things that they said that I thought was interesting was, because of course the Seaweed Brain podcast is like, I don't like it that much because they're like super about like the romance stuff. Yeah, Luke apologists too, but also because they always, it makes this, I don't know how to like explain this in words. It makes me feel weird, and maybe if this is just like my trauma stuff, but probably not. It makes me feel weird how often they talk about the like romantic scenes that are coming up with Percy and Annabeth to Leah and Walker. Because it's going to be really weird it's going to be super weird for them to act those scenes out. They're like brother and sister with how they interact with each other, like the jokes they play on set against each other and things like that. That's like how they are. They feel like they're family along with Aryan. And so it feels weird for them to be asking them about that, even though they know they have to act those scenes out.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are like kids who don't even know, like, there's no way at that age that you fully, completely grasp even what you think about like your own like romantic ideas or whatever in your own life, especially when you're spending a lot of your time acting in roles, not really spending that much time thinking about that kind of stuff because you're busy like having like a job. And so I'm like, they probably aren't even that sure about themselves, much less like trying to figure out how to act that out as their own character. It just feels weird. But either way, they asked Walker about it and asked about like what's going on with them in season 2. And one thing he did say that I hadn't heard somebody say yet was that that he was talking about how at the end of season 1, Annabeth was gonna go off into like the human world, like go to Disney World and see her dad and like go see a movie and all this kind of stuff. And he didn't hear from her that whole like year. And so when they see each other, he's like trying to ask her about what happened. Like what happened in like the human world, like how did it go like with your dad and all this kind of stuff. And she won't tell him for many episodes about what happened. He said it was somewhere around like episode 3 and 4, like probably around the time when she's like upset when they're on Clarice's ship and they talk finally for a second before everything literally explodes. But it's probably somewhere around that time, but still like that. And I was like, I really like that they put that in to have like another kind of tension thing going on with them besides Tyson, because it is like a thing of like, it is a thing of that if they didn't talk at all for like an entire year, that would hurt like Percy's feelings, and you would wonder like why she's not telling him things. And it does also open herself up to talk about her dad and to talk about things with her dad and her stepmom and that kind of like emotional neglect sort of abuse that is like Annabeth's situation. Even with Athena, that's her situation. And so I hope that that's kind of what they're doing is maybe she doesn't want to tell him about what happened when she saw her dad because it didn't go as well as she wanted it to, or who knows. They could say a lot of different things, but either way, just the general idea that for the first couple episodes, besides Tyson and that kind of stuff going on, Annabeth isn't telling him about something that happened, and he keeps trying to ask her about it, and she won't say what happened until a few episodes in. And I'm like, that's I just like that they added that in to just make that tension feel like there's already like the Tyson stuff going on is like obviously stuff going on with like her past, but also whatever happens with her dad is connected to her past. And so it's a very easy like way for them to connect those things together, that to have, Annabeth talk about her dad in the present while then showing us what happened when she was on the run with Luke and Thalia in the past. Like when you're already bringing up Annabeth's past, you might as well just bring up her dad again. And this show is actually gonna like remember these things. Like that was the last thing they talked about in the last episode. So they're going to bring it up again because they're treating them like actual characters. And not like sometimes on TV shows, they have scenes like that at like the end of the season and they never like acknowledge them ever again. Yeah. And you're like, where are you going? What's happening? What about the last time you guys saw each other? You said this thing and now you're not, and now you're acting like you never said that thing. Is it just because it's a new thing and now you're not, and now you're acting like you never said that thing? Is it just because it's a new season? But that's not how like relationships work. So I'm always glad when people can actually write. That's always a plus. So that'll be fun. And fun in like, of course, a traumatic way, but that's the fun that you have on Percy Jackson. And then there's a bunch of stuff of Arian and Dior talking about them having scenes together in the cave, which is really exciting around Polyphemus and stuff when she's on the island with him. And Dior kind of said that there's a scene where he's there, like she knows that he's also there, but she can't see him, and so she just kind of like, says a lot of stuff about her own life that she normally would never say. And it's one of those things, like, he's there, she knows that he can hear everything that she's saying, but they're not like having a conversation necessarily about it, but it's still one of those things of that person still knows that about you. And the way that they put it was that like after that, they kind of have like a mutual respect about each other. They like know and understand things about each other much more than they did before. And they said like, you know, what happens in the cave stays in the cave. It made me wonder if like Clarice is the other person that wears a wedding dress, because that would be really funny. She would be hilarious as like a really angry bride. That like imagine me wearing a wedding dress and like trying and like having to talk to somebody while wearing a wedding dress. That's what it would sound like. I also wouldn't like that and would have fun like messing with that person while also being really angry about the fact that I'm wearing a wedding dress. um, and so it like either way, it is very exciting to me to imagine that in season 2 they're showing Grover and Clarice having like relationships with each other, or just Grover having a relationship outside of like Percy and Annabeth.
Yeah.
Because that was something that was definitely lacking in the overall like books and stuff. Like my general like I don't think Rick Riordan is ever going to tell us anything like this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Grover wasn't like initially meant to be like as big of a character as he is in like the books, but he ended up like kind of becoming one as he was writing them, just because he doesn't have as like clear set of like a storyline as Percy and Annabeth do from the first book on. He kind of doesn't know like what necessarily to do with him. And I could see them like wanting him to add a third character like that, as that's like a because of Harry Potter. Because when those books came out, Harry Potter was so huge. And so it was one of those things like I could see his publisher like wanting him to add somebody, and it's like another, so it's another trio. And him making like Grover's role bigger than maybe he initially meant it to be, or something. Just because he doesn't have as much as like a set storyline with anybody really,
Well,
as
in
you go
Greek
through the books.
mythology-wise, three is kind of like a divine number. There's a lot of threes, so he
Yeah,
would
like I
also
think
want
he
to
was
fix that.
always like in some way meant to be there, but I'm not sure if he was going to be like a huge
As big of
character
a
in like every single book like he ended up like becoming. Like I'm really glad that he is, because I really like his
Yeah.
character, and I really like his friendship with Percy. It's really sweet, and watching Arian act him out in the show is really great because he does such a good job with it. But it is really cool to imagine that Grover has this like understanding of Clarice that could help like Percy and Annabeth understand her better when they show up. And just the idea that he has this separate thing with her that none of the other characters do, because he's the only one that was there when all of that stuff was going on. Just the fact that they have their own like thing like that happening is really cool. And it's really fun to imagine like Arian and Dior getting to do like dig into those sort of scenes, because their scenes when they're there are like more like internal thoughts and stuff, like her dealing with the stuff with Ares and him dealing with the guilt that he misplaced guilt, but still like guilt that he feels about Thalia. And they're both like have been trying to avoid thinking about things that are hard for them to deal with, but now that they're trapped in this cave with this Cyclops that's trying to manipulate them, they have like no choice but to deal with it. And so it's just cool to see like those characters getting that time to have like a fully fleshed out story, because then everything else that happens with them after this moment makes it much more interesting. Like one thing that that Arian said is that he thinks about Pan as like a philosophical thing. And he was saying like in the first season or so, like he's like searching for Pan in other people, and he said that Percy was like his Pan, and that in season 2 he's like not ready to like give up on like helping Percy or like trying to find Percy. And so he's not giving up on Percy being like his Pan basically for the moment, that he's still like trying to search for and help and things like that. And I'm like, that's a really good way of talking about this sort of thing. Another thing Arian said was that he said that they asked like what they could take from like their characters. And Arian said that Grover is really good at being super empathetic and kind of anticipating people's emotional needs before they happen. And so he said that he is gonna like try to get better at doing that sort of thing for the people he loves in his life, and just like hope that one day he gets to be as good at it as Grover is. And I'm like, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
They all had really interesting answers for that kind of question. Like I forget which one of the two podcasts they were talking about. I think it was, I can't remember, but it was one of the ones with Daniel and Walker, where Daniel was talking about Tyson being homeless and things like that, and that being his whole journey, that he like he's more thankful for Poseidon because he's not in the streets anymore. That they asked, like, before they went into like the Percy and Annabeth stuff, they asked Walker about what Percy is kind of thinking before, when all of this stuff starts happening in this season, and he's confronted with all these like difficult things to deal with. And the way he put it was like perfect, because he's like, Percy's just kind of used to it at this point, that whenever life gets a little bit okay and things seem to be fine, everything explodes
No.
again. And I'm like, yeah.
That sounds about right.
I'm like, that's the complex PTSD life. It's like, you enjoy when things are okay because you never know when they're not going to be, and just kind of deal with it. But yeah, that's exactly what Percy just kind of does. It's like, okay, well, now everything was okay for a while, and now everything is going to shit again. And I just have to figure out how to deal with it. I'm trying to remember some of the other stuff they said, but, or like Arian and Dior said. The one like clip that I posted that Dior said, that I was like, Jesus Christ, about like Clarissa's storyline in this next season, for people like me at least, is she said, like, what advice would you give your characters? Like, was like the question.
What's some advice you're giving your character heading into season 2?
Allow yourself to be loved by people, and allow yourself to accept help. And I would also tell her, being your father does not mean being successful. She comes to realize this, like, herself. She has the most beautiful arc this season. Like, I remember getting into the prep room with our coach, Andrew, and just really getting into the nitty-gritty of where her heart was and where her soul was, and why she was even like this. Because when you look at people like Clarice just in real life, it's always those people who have gone through like loss after loss after loss that makes them the way that they are. Our lives are so scary similar, and her mindset was my mindset at one point, and so I got to heal myself while playing her this season, and it was very, I'm getting emotional, it was very, very close to my heart. I'm so blessed to have been able to play her.
And can this show relax for especially oldest daughters that have like really intense problems with their father figures? Because whatever happens with Aries in that season is going to be intense for her. But I'm already really excited to watch that whole storyline and probably cry, because it is really hard. It just is. It's just hard to realize that your dad doesn't give a shit about you. It's good that like Clarice can figure it out when she's like 17. I think she's like 17 in the second season. I might be wrong about her actual age, but either way, she's younger-ish to figure that out. So at least she figures it out sooner than most of us actually do. But it always sucks when you realize it. But then when you start to like do little baby steps of trusting people, that always is helpful, to like realize like, oh, everyone's not gonna like cut my head off and try to kill me or something.
Yeah.
Like, that's always nice. That's a surprise still to this day whenever people do that, and or they don't do that, and I'm like waiting, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was a lot easier than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. I made a note just that of what a big fan of Percy Jackson Daniel is too, because he also just knows things, and the way that Walker knows all the things, and so it's fun watching interviews with the two of them talking about it, because they're the most like knowledgeable ones probably, besides people like us just like knowing everything about everything. And Daniel, because he's 28, is somebody who like read The Lightning Thief when he was like 10, which is when it initially came out. Like was reading them as they were happening, and he has younger brothers, and so he got his younger siblings to read them after that. But he's always been into the books too. And that very much comes across in all of his interviews, because he just talks about Tyson with such like passion, like talks about how it was really important to him to show like Tyson's traumatic past, but also show like the more innocent minded, like kind of like funny sides of him and the things that he says and stuff like that, but also how like innocent in like a sweet way he is with Percy, and how important it was to like have that come across. Charlie was talking about how Luke would try to convince Annabeth to join him still if they could talk the way that Grover and Percy can talk, like with their mind meld stuff.
Yeah.
During season 2. And he was saying like, oh, it's because Luke thinks that this is like the best thing for everybody. And they were talking about they started talking about Thalia. And they asked Leah, like, what does your character think of Thalia? And she was basically saying that, like, Thalia is like a mom figure. Like, her mom, Athena, isn't really around. And so she just kind of, like, Thalia is, like, her kind of, like, replacement mom. And so, like, losing her like that is really hard, because that is what Thalia would be for somebody like Annabeth. And I will say, there's this one podcast I just randomly found that I really like, because it's done by 2 sisters, I think, that are both social workers. So I was like, oh, we should talk somehow, because we would probably get along with like literally everything. But they're doing like 1 chapter at a time of The Lightning Thief, and they mentioned, just on like a TikTok I saw the other day, they were talking about how the first thing that Annabeth ever says when she's like explaining to Percy about the world, and like when they first get to camp and in The Lightning Thief and stuff, and Annabeth says like, yeah, our parents just don't care about us. And that's like the first thing that anyone ever tells Percy about their parents. And Annabeth is like, 12 then, and she just knows like, yeah, my mom is Athena. I know that my mom is Athena, but she just doesn't care about me enough to actually be around. And she's just like telling Percy like straight up, like, yeah, they're just not around. They just don't care enough to actually be here. And these are like 12-year-old kids. And this is like me having like moments just in life where I heard that. And I remember after I watched them say that, I was like looking at my phone like this, like, is that not normal to know? Like, because I just, like, grew up knowing those things. Like, every once in a while still, I'll, like, see people's reaction to, like, even just, like, a fictional situation. And I'll just be like, yeah, that's normal for me. Is that not normal I know it's not normal for everybody else, but it still, like, throws me off how abnormal it is for other people. Because I'm like, yeah, I knew that by that age, too. Way before that age, actually. Like, I knew that when I was a couple years younger than that. And so it is like a thing of, it's said in like just a tell it like it is sort of way. And that is like how they see parents. And so her having another possibly like figure to look up to, like Thalia, especially because they're both played by Black girls too on the show, is a big deal. And so for her to lose that again would be really hard. And that one scene when Percy calls her like when he's like making, his Percy jokes about them when they're leaving camp in the 3rd episode.
An acorn's fate.
Yeah, she's like, she met a pinecone's fate, and Annabeth looks like she's about to like pile drive his face. And it's like, yeah, that's Annabeth actually remembers Thalia and actually likes her and isn't like bastardizing her memory like Luke is at the moment. And so she would feel like that about her. And then that was when Charlie started talking about Luke and how Luke would feel. And they're talking about him stabbing her in the trailer. And like Leah even at this point brought up like the fact that she's like, what about the blood, bro? There's like blood coming out of her tree when you do that, sir. And because he started saying like, oh, I think that Luke thinks that he's putting her out of her misery. And this was like one of those things I'm like, yeah, this is like a whole discussion we could have that we're going to have right now of like that is what I thought like Luke would think is like that whole idea of, I thought it was funny. I'm remembering now that this was on Monster Donut, because when they played that clip they came back, and even though they are more like very much like Luke apologists, the one host was like, "What is wrong with you, Luke?" when they said that that's how like Charlie saw it. But I'm like, yeah, people like that is what they think of like their way of thinking is like the only way that they could imagine ever thinking. And so the way that Charlie said it was like in like the flashback stuff, which is why we're reading Demigod Diaries for Mondays, because it's all based on the Demigod Diaries, is that they were talking about in those flashbacks and whatnot that that Thalia and him don't like what camp like represents, at least to them at that point. Like the idea of like, you know, worshiping the gods or thinking the gods are great or like being like their heroes or whatever. And so for Luke, he would just be like, yeah, her being here is like in the name of like protecting the gods or like helping the gods somehow. So if I take her out, she won't be doing that anymore. Even though she'll be dead, at least she won't be like doing something that is against what she believes. But like that's not what that means. You don't just kill people or hurt people because you think that your way of thinking about how they would feel about something is the only way that they could possibly feel about something. The discussion I wanted to have about this is because sometimes I will see videos and I will feel like I live in an alternate reality, because it will be like some 17-year-old kid saying that Luke is a revolutionary and that Percy is not. And I'm like, that is literally the absolute reverse of like what is actually happening. But I feel like politically minded, at least if you want to bring like, and we should, considering what Greek mythology is, Luke is the kind of person who thinks that the only way to like make things better or to like get back at the people in power is to literally burn everything to the ground. Yes. And just to like make it super fucking blunt as like a white person, so like you can't get that mad at me, I'm very white, is that the only people who are willing to do that are white people, because we are the only ones that usually are not marginalized in another way that would die. And I always make the point that Percy Jackson is like the more real version because it's written by somebody who actually went through stuff in their life, not somebody cosplaying like they went through things in their life, like J.K. Rowling. Like Rick Riordan actually went through things. He didn't have to lie about his backstory for people to root for him because he actually went through hard stuff. Mm-hmm. And so his book that he wrote with his wife would be about actually those things and about a character that is like the things that Percy does in the book is how you actually have those things happen. Because like you can like want the government to be overturned, but it's never going to go the way that you think it will. And it's also the way that people say like, oh, if you hate the gods, then you're on Luke's side. That's like saying that if you know that the government is corrupt, that you would be in the Capitol on January 6th. Like that's the exact comparison that you're making. Because Luke is saying that he hates the gods as a justification to literally wipe everyone out who doesn't believe in him or doesn't agree with him and thinks that that's the only way to save humanity. Mm-hmm. That's not at all the same thing. Like Percy and all the other kids that don't want him to be doing this and are basically begging him throughout the books to stop killing them, they don't like the gods either.
And listen to me.
Maybe you could say hi to your dad while we're here.
No thanks.
What could it hurt?
Your thing with your mom, I get it. It's different. It works for you, but my father, I don't want anything from him. He's had his chances. Honestly, you've done more for me in the past few days than my father's done in my entire life.
Isn't how it should be. It isn't. Eat or be eaten. Power and glory and nothing else matters. Ares is that way. Zeus is that way. My mother is that way. He isn't that way. He's better than that. Maybe I was that way once, but I don't want to be that way anymore.
I was just putting Thalia out of her misery when I stabbed her to death. Or like tried to stab her to death when she was not even like a sentient being that could even try to stop me. You should see Luke thinking that he's saving her from some horrible fate by killing her and feel like he has lost his mind. Like, you shouldn't actually be considering those sort of things. Like, you shouldn't be willing to consider innocent people dying because you think that if they die that you'll somehow get like the utopia that you desire. Like, Jean was on our podcast on Monday, and I remember she was talking about The Last of Us, the Last of Us TV show. At a certain point, there's like a little kid, like a 5 or 6 year old kid, and it's a situation of like, if they kill the kid, then they will put themselves out of danger, but then they would be killing like this little kid, and they kill the kid in the show. And Jean was talking about it because she was saying like that's what made her stop watching the show. What could your society possibly be worth fighting for if you kill children in order to get it? There is no point. And that's literally like the entire point of Luke, of like, if the only way that you can get the society and the world to look the way that you think it should is by murdering innocent children, then it's not worth ever doing anything, because then it's built on the bodies of killing innocent children. Like,
yeah. I mean, I've always wondered, like, because I know we compare Luke to Anakin Skywalker a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What have I done?
Why did the younglings have to die? Like, was there an explanation in that one?
The basic idea in Star Wars is Palpatine basically tells Anakin, like, you don't know when those people might like turn against you, and those people aren't going to like be on your side. They're not going to want to join you. And so he basically is like, I need to take out anybody that is like a threat. And you can't possibly know, like, and it's the whole idea of like, even if this is like a little kid, they could grow up to hate you. Like the whole thing of Odysseus throwing a baby off of the balcony in the Odyssey and stuff, that general idea of like, this kid is innocent now, but it might grow up and hate me and want to kill me one day. And so it's the idea of like, if I take out all of these kids now, there's no people left in the galaxy that have the power to take me down. And now that I am like the supreme ruler, nobody will be able to challenge me and like take me out, and I'll be able to do what I want to do and get everything done that I want to get done. And that's like the basic reason of why he goes in there to do it. And he's like so focused on his task that he's willing to do that, and it's like so sure that he's right. Like that's why he's such a good, like you were right with like comparing Luke to him, because it's very similar, of the idea of being so sure that the way that you see the world and that your like kind of goal is what's actually good for everybody. Like, I don't think either one of those characters actually think that. Like, I understand why Charlie says stuff like that, because he's playing this character, and you need to find something to like hold on to that resembles humanity, even when you're playing a villain like that, in order to do a good job playing him. Like, Anakin just works so good with Luke because they're both so like focused on their task. And the only way I ever know how to describe like villains like that, like even Kylo, and I compare him to Kylo too in Star Wars, that they see that there's people around them, but they don't really fully see you as like a fully fledged person. Because if they did, they wouldn't be able to like do the things that they can do. They just think that what they want needs to happen over like literally everything else in the world. And so they see people more as like ways to like get what they want, ways to be happy, ways to get like their needs met. And so they'll like have relationships that they think are meaningful, and they think like they will love people, but it's never like the kind of love that you should really get from actual people that aren't like this necessarily. But they do care about people, and they do love people. Like Luke does care about Annabeth, and he does love her in a really creepy, predatory sort of way. But he does like love her, and he does love like Thalia, and he did care about Percy at a certain point. But also, like, none of the things of them as people will ever supersede what like he actually wants to do. And so like, as soon as those people are in the way of like his path, like what he thinks he deserves to get, nothing that you say to those people will make them stop. That's like the whole thing with people like that, is that's why they can do all those horrible things to people, because as soon as you like are in their way in some way, all of love they have for you turns into this, like, how dare you stop me? How dare you have the audacity to think that you could possibly stop me right now? Which is why, like, Anakin, you know, kills Padme and kills all those kids and tries to kill Obi-Wan and turns into a giant charcoal piece. And like, in Revenge of the Sith, and why, like, Kylo ends up fighting nothing, fighting air, and doesn't even realize it when he's fighting Luke, and then ends up dying when his mother has to literally, like, slap him in the face with the Force to get him to stop. People like Luke and Kylo and Anakin and anyone else you can think of like that, they don't care. Yeah. They don't care if it makes things worse. They don't care if it, like, hurts people. Because they don't really see you as a full person. They don't. They see you as, that's the only way they can see people. And so they don't know another way, but that is how they end up like that. One of the things a lot of, like, general right-wing people do is they think that people on the left are pretending like we care about the things that we care about. That's why they, like, will, like, needle us with things that don't make sense to us. Because they think that we're pretending to care about trans people or pretending to care about queer people, but we don't actually care that much about marginalized people, and we're just pretending to so that we can, like, look good. Because they will do stuff like that. And so it generally, like, surprises them when they realize, if they do realize, sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do realize that, no, we actually do care about these people. We actually do care. We're not pretending to care. But people like those people, they just kind of, they, like, pretend like they care in the way because they see how other people act and they know that they should, but they don't actually care as much as other people do. And so they just assume that everyone else is pretending too. Yeah. And so, like, Luke would think, like, oh, you're just pretending like you really don't like the gods and you're doing this just to protect all these other kids. You're really just doing this to try to stop me. You just don't have the guts to admit that you're just trying to make your dad proud. And it doesn't matter how many times that Percy tells him over and over again through, like, words and his actions and stuff that, no, I don't care about Poseidon. I'm not happy with Poseidon at all. This isn't about Poseidon. This is about, like, all these other kids. These are the kids that I care about. Is everyone else like me? He could tell him that every single day, and Luke will never believe him.
That's true.
Because he's just so sure that everyone believes what he believes, but they're just, like, not, like, man enough to admit it. That's, like, the best way to put it. They think everyone believes what they believe, but nobody else will, like, admit it. They'll just rather pretend like they don't. And it's like, no one else believes what you do. The installation thing, they also had Thalia's shield, which had Medusa's head on it. And I was like, can I get you off that shield somehow? No. And then they also had, like, the boombox. And I really hope that this is real, because they had a, like, tape, you know, like my childhood tape, next to it that was Mariah Carey's CD Emotions, where she sings, like, that super high.
Wait, that would be so funny.
I'm like, that's perfect. That's perfect. And especially even with Chiron being played by a black actor, he would listen to, like, 1991 version of Mariah Carey.
Yeah.
And where she sang those, like, super high notes. I'm like, I really hope that's what they do on the show, because that's so perfect. Mm-hmm. I want it to be that now. I think that's all I can remember right now for, like, Comic-Con stuff. Other than that, there's been stuff with, like, season 3, because this is all happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so last week, I think, last week, they posted something. Oh yeah, the thing that made everybody be weird about Walker. That they started filming season 3, but the picture of him, you can see, like, Westover behind him, and there's, like, his mom's car, and there's snow on the ground, and he's wearing, like, a jacket. I'm like, yeah, this is, like, literally perfect. And it's only, like, one tiny little picture, but that would make everybody excited because it's just happening. I think that is funny that so much of, like, season 3 is literally every single thing about it makes everybody really giddy and also really emotional at the same time.
Yes.
Because we're like, everyone, including Rick, Like, even Rick Riordan posting about it, like, he posted the picture of Walker from the first day of filming, and he was like, it's so exciting that we got this far. Like, he even is like super excited to like actually see this stuff happening in real time. And it's like we've never gotten this far. The horrible movies ended after Sea of Monsters. Thank God.
Yeah,
But
who
like
knows what they would have done next.
don't want to generally just try not to think about it. Like, I don't even know what they would do to like Zoe.
Yeah, you know what I do want like I really want it to be a part of our collective fandom around Kronos is him picking up Luke and saying delicious, my
Delicious.
favorite. You know, like delicious is my addition, of course, but my favorite when he grabs him, like, because he's already eaten his descendants. What if that was his entire reason for starting this war? It's just like, I need some snacks.
I'm just
so-
hungry. You're not you when you're hungry. That's basically Kronos overall.
Yeah.
He just needed a snack. All he eats are apparently humans or his own
His descendants.
children. Really weird version of incest, but that's like the only thing that apparently he's hungry for. But either way, like, everything with this season's just gonna make everybody really excited / cry because at the same time, because it's just like, oh my God, it's finally happening. The other thing like that was James Bobin is a director for episode 1 and 2, and the day that they posted about Titan's Curse starting. Oh, also like the clapboard, it has a name. I don't ever remember what that thing is
What
called.
it's called.
But on the board it had like constellations, and I was just like, guys, can you not do this to us already?
Yeah, so it was Mink Golden last time, and now we have constellations.
Yeah, and I was like, okay. Oh God. And also like a sidebar to see like what happens in the future, but Rick posted a picture of constellations to start this week, and I was just like, what are you doing? Are you like him and like, this is like me just like understanding Riordan speak, but sometimes they do stuff like that. And then like a couple days later you're like, oh. Like, I remember like last summer, I think. Yeah, because it was when they were filming Sea of Monsters. So sometime last summer or fall, Becky posted like a bunch of spiders. And I remember that I screenshot it and then sent it to you. And I was like, I'm just sending this to you in case this actually means something. And then a couple weeks later was when they announced that Athena was like cast on the show. And I was like, oh, that's why she was posting spiders. And so they like to do stuff like fun stuff like that. And so I was looking at that like, I know you're going to tell us who she is. Like, you have to, because you're filming with her right now, which like makes me happy every single day to think about how somebody's on set right now as Zoe, most likely. That's wild. Beyond like little baby like Nico and Bianca running around doing shenanigans, and even like people like Thorne or Atlas and whoever Artemis is. It's all just so exciting. But the thing that Rick posted today was that he watched the first dailies. He said, Nico, Bianca, Dr. Thorne, I can't believe we actually made it this far. And he said, so cool. And no, I can't tell you who plays Thorne yet, but he's perfect. And so I'm like, I know you'll tell us whenever Disney just like unilaterally just decides that we're ready. But that's just like wild to see stuff from season 3 and just know that they're filming it. I'm just like, what? Oh, and James Bowen, that's what I was going to say, was James Bowen. James Bowen did a post of like a bunch of notebooks and stuff. And one of the things that I've learned from knowing behind the scenes things is that he's basically was showing them storyboarding. Like, directors will like, sometimes it's like a person's job on set where they'll like draw like what like the shot that they want in like the episode. And usually how directors figure out episodes is they'll have like drawings like that for like every single scene for the entire episode, and that's how they figure out like where they shoot, where they film, what cameras they use and stuff like that. And so he posted notebooks, and he's doing episode 1 and 2. And the one thing you can see on the notebook is he's talking about like the different camera angles. And he says like a camera closes up on Thalia, drenched, angry,
Yeah.
and is like, oh, that's the capture the flag scene, and him like figuring out like the camera angles for that scene of like the camera like going close up probably on her rage filled face before she electrocutes Percy for like the third time in a row. And that whole interaction. But either way, just like there's even like a little drawing on his notebook to the side where if you like, of course, because I mean, like made it bigger, on the top it says like Hephaestus, and there's all these like arrows and stuff. It's him trying to figure out her stupid plan of like where all the different actors will go when they're trying to film the capture the flag scene of her plan. And, but either way, it's just like, oh my God, like that's like them actually storyboarding that actual scene that they're actually going to film in person, and we're actually going to be able to watch it in like a year or so. Actually seeing them do that, like the one hope I had for that scene when we found out that Thalia is British is that I want Percy to yell at her in like a fake British accent when she's like when she's like electrocuting him, and she's like, oh, I didn't mean to do it. I hope he just is like done with her and it's just like, oh, I didn't mean to do it. And it's like making fun of her like that, like you deserve when you electrocute somebody 3 times in a row because you lost a game.
Yeah.
That's, what are you doing? Especially when it was actually your fault because your plan wasn't that good.
Yeah, your plan was bonkers, girly.
Yeah. But either way, just seeing that, knowing that then that's going to happen in episode 2. And so you can imagine that episode 2 will end with probably the scene with Nico that will make everybody remember that he never said that he was going to save Bianca's life. He never promised anything. And then him leaving camp with the Pegasus, with Blackjack. That's probably, as you can imagine, where that episode would end. And it's just, I don't even want to think about all the things that happen after that moment because there's just so many things. Yeah. There's too many things to think about. But either way, that was really exciting to see too, and just be like, oh my, this is like real. Yeah. Like this is going to happen. Like they're going to be acting out these scenes and stuff. And whoa, like that's a lot.
Yeah, I'm hoping for more British jokes than just making fun of the accent. If he doesn't yell at her about beans and toast at least once.
I want him to yell about like, do you need tea and crumpets? Or something like that, because she definitely deserves that. One thing I was going to say before when we were talking about how Luke and Thalia in the past don't like camp and like what it represents and stuff. And we'll be like talking about that probably before they get there. It's one of those things that you can do that before you get to a place because you have this idea of what you think it's going to be like. But when I think if Thalia actually got there, she would still feel that pressure of being like a Zeus child, like the way that Percy does. But it would be different because those kids would all actually like her and she would have like support and people like Chiron and stuff like that would be there to try to help her instead of not having anybody like she had before. But that plan is just like a good example of that whole thing, that Thalia just like doesn't know how to handle like the pressure and it's just like, how can I figure out a way to get away from this? Basically. And it's just like, I don't want to have to like actually like stay here and like try because everybody's watching me. And so the pressure of like failing is like too much. And so I'm just going to find a way to get away from this place and never come back. And that's basically like what she does. Like she's still there and she's in The Last Olympian. It's not like she never comes back. If they had more time, if Calypso didn't keep Percy on her island for 2 weeks and they had more time to get people, she definitely would have come back to help defend camp at the end of that book. And the kids that died at the end of the book probably wouldn't have died. But it is like a thing of, she kind of has like the weird privilege in this world of, even though she's a Zeus child, she also has a way to like get away. And because like we've said before, like people like Percy and Nico, I don't think people would have like let them get away in the same way. They would have just treated them like garbage if they tried. But with Thalia, she's able to say in front of all the gods that she's joined Artemis and like has forsaken her like mortal life and is never going to be 16 and isn't going to be part of this prophecy anymore. And the gods are somehow all fine with it. And they don't like punish her for doing that. And I think if Nico or Percy somehow found a way to do something like that, they would have punished them.
Yeah.
For doing the same kind of thing. And so it's always interesting to hear like what Charlie talk about, like what Luke thought or like what him and Thalia thought, because they're both coming from like a weirdly privileged place in this like traumatizing world, but still like both of them knew who their parent was. Mm-hmm. And because they knew who their parent was, they felt like pressure to like live up to that idea, but both of them also were like trying to do things for a while to like in a weird way like please their parents in some way, and they were like frustrated or let down by the fact that they couldn't. But like even that one scene I remember in Titan's Curse during like when they're fighting at the school, Thalia is like when she runs out to like fight like Thorn and stuff, she yells like for Zeus, and I remember I was like, what? Like for Zeus? Like you're yelling like that you're fighting in his name in battle? Like Percy would like explode into dust before he would ever be like, yeah, I'm totally fighting for Poseidon. Yeah, that's totally me. Like, no.
Yeah.
That'd be like me saying like for my dad. Like that's when you know I like lost my mind. But like no, he would never say that. And so even though she's like the more like angry one, or she is mad at Zeus and doesn't like camp and all that stuff, still even then she's like she's at least yelling in his name in the beginning of the book. And so they both are kind of weirdly privileged, but I don't think they fully I think Thalia realizes that she is, especially after she leaves and she's talking like in The Last Olympian when she talks to Percy some. I do think that she has like more separation from the stuff that happened, and she's able to like see things a little bit more clearly after she pushes Luke off of a cliff, and is able to like really see how things really are and stuff like that. But it does take a while for her to see it. But like Luke, of course, never really does. But it's just that it feels like those scenes you see in movies of like the popular kids, like saying like even though there are things that are really traumatic and hard in their lives, they also have like an easier path than other people do. And it doesn't mean that the things that happen to them aren't really traumatic or whatever, but it is just true that they have an easier route than other people, than everyone else but them really has.
Yeah.
They just do for whatever reason. Like people like Luke might feel like he's a failure or something because he goes on a quest and isn't able to kill Ladon, but he is able to go on a quest with his father, who not only claimed him but even acknowledges his existence in the books, when that doesn't. And in the same way that Thalia knows that her dad is Zeus, even though her mom is a mess and all that kind of stuff, they still know who their parent is. And just like that bare minimum is something that most of the kids don't have. And so it's always interesting to see how even people like that are like the golden children of the world, that they're still not happy. And so it's like a thing of like, if the chosen one kids aren't happy, then nobody's happy.
Yeah.
Like absolutely no one. Like that one podcast I mentioned before, that they're called the Percyverse podcast. They were talking about in another video that that when they first get to camp, the Lightning Thief, that Chiron is talking about how they have like a strawberry farm, and they sell the strawberries on the farm in order to like pay for the camp to like exist still. And they were like, the gods don't pay for their children's camp.
Nope.
They make them pay for it themselves. And I was like, yeah, of course they don't.
With physical labor.
Yeah. But it's just like that whole idea of like, they don't give you anything. They make you work for absolutely everything and expect you to just do it. Because why would I take the time to do this stuff for you?
Yeah. And I mean, some parents can be like that in a way where it's like they think it's character building, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it doesn't necessarily come from abuse. Like my in-laws are the type of people that have money but act like they don't. You know what I mean? Like they live very very like below their means. And so Jake talks about in the 90s having like a, you know, you'll get $1 if you do your chores. And he's like, do you remember in the 90s you could buy like one candy bar? You could maybe get an Arizona iced tea. Like, yeah.
Actually, things were actually $1 or less
Things
than
were,
that.
but it was like you could get one thing.
I'm also older than you guys, but
Yeah.
when I was like growing up, even when I was in high school, you could get a 20 ounce of soda at the grocery store for 89 cents.
Each other like that, and I don't think that would happen if it wasn't happening for some of them at home.
No. And oh, Sophia's saying that Chiron is entrenched in that attitude too. I have very different opinions about Chiron than probably everyone else, just because of the position he's in the world, is in this place of like being the go-between person of the really abusive people and the kids. And that's just kind of my general outlook, like the whole rant I always go on about helping kids that are abused. I had like one of the best days I had a couple weeks ago on TikTok. There's this account that I now followed that is somebody who teaches self-defense classes for like women and children. And he does a lot of videos talking about like keeping you safe or keeping especially children safe. And he did this video and I was like, this is like the best video I've ever seen, because this is all the things that I say, but nobody ever listens to me when I say them. So hopefully they'll listen to you when you are saying them. And he's like, I'm not saying anything that like every like expert in this field knows. I'm like, I know, but they still don't listen when we say this stuff. And he did this video saying that that like children that are harmed by people that they already know, not like strangers. And he literally said the exact same things that I've said about like, if you think that a child is being abused, you have to like take it slow with them. He even said like, they're going to test you. They're going to test you and ask you about things that aren't that bad to see how you're going to respond to those things. And you have to respond to them the right way. Otherwise, they're not going to tell you about them, about like the bigger thing they really want to tell you about later on. And the video he was saying was just like, you can't just like end like sexual abuse with children. It's just going to be something that's going to happen as long as society is around, because children are the most innocent figures, and so people who want to use people will use them. But it's more of an idea of, if you know how to like talk to kids as like humans, and then like just take steps with them instead of immediately jumping to like calling the police, then you're going to actually be able to help more kids get out of situations than if you immediately jump to, if I just call the cops, then everything will be fine, because that's never what's actually true. But that's like this whole thing, I don't know. It just, I always think of that with all of this stuff too, is with the media that we like and just how we think about this stuff anyway. That is like, if you just look at them like they're normal people like you or me, and think about like, what would you want? Like if somebody was hurting you, but you were afraid that they were going to hurt you, or they were going to find out of you telling somebody, like how would you tell somebody something like that? Like even you hear people and they have like bad news. It isn't like necessarily bad in that way, but just like unhappy news. They'll say like, are you sitting down? And that's like them trying to like prep you for what they're about to say. That's what kids are doing when they say that kind of stuff. They're prepping you for something else down the line. And like, nobody seems to pick up on that unless you're somebody who's actually done that before. Because even my therapist used to say that to me of like, why are you bringing these other things up? And it's like, these things are connected in my mind. I'm bringing this one thing up because it's easier for me to talk about this one thing, because I'm prepping you for bringing up something else that's harder for me to talk about.
Yeah.
And like, people don't realize it in the moment, I don't think, unless they've like been through that sort of thing before. But that's where a lot of those things come from. And if you let kids like just talk to you, those things will come out and they'll actually be helpful for once, instead of shutting it all down before it ever even gets that far. Because I do wonder like how many people are out there that were going to tell somebody something and then decided like, never mind. But like Chiron is somebody like that in Percy Jackson, where he could like be more definitive and tell the gods like, I'm not allowing you to do this and this and this, but then he would die. The gods would kill him, and then the kids wouldn't have anybody else to help them. And so,
or he'd at the very least lose his place where he's like having his
like what
proximity
happened
to
in
them.
Sea of Monsters, he wouldn't be able to be there to help them anymore. And so he has to play like the in-between role as the person that sometimes the kids that are there are upset at him when they don't know fully what's going on. It's completely understandable for them to be upset at him, but I also think he's fine with them doing that. And so he's okay with them having like being upset with him sometimes, because he is the person that's the stand-in for these things. But also if he wasn't there, it would be much worse. And he protects those kids from a lot of the other things that their parents would actually want to do to them. And it's just, these kids need a place that they can have like a chance to like be safe for a while, and have a chance to like find community, find like real family, have somebody that like tries to take care of them, tries to like give them tools and things to like survive their life beyond like the point that they're at. And they're not going to get that anywhere else but this place. And he's going to be the one to do it because he actually cares about these kids. And like, yeah, you can get upset that he like didn't tell Nico about what happened to Bianca because he was too distracted by them finding the labyrinth. And he didn't tell like Percy about the snap stuff because he's just as susceptible to the idea of like, I have to tell the Zeus child everything right away, but I will take my time with Percy, who is a Poseidon child that isn't immediately in the position of authority right away. But at the same time, he's also telling Percy in Sea of Monsters that he doesn't have to be the prophecy child if he doesn't want to. And if the gods get mad at him, they'll chew fucking bad. They'll just have to deal with it, and telling him explicitly that nobody can make him do this. And is like telling him at the beginning of The Last Olympian, when he tells him about how the prophecy says he's going to be stabbed to death, that he didn't want to tell Percy about it until they absolutely had to, because he was already carrying way too many things and he didn't want to make it worse. Or like him at the end about the labyrinth, when he tells Percy, like, I know you didn't tell me about Nico because you thought that I would be upset with you or think that it was your fault somehow, but of course I don't think it's your fault. Like, he says like everything Percy needs to hear when he's ready to hear it. Like, he could have like pushed the issue of like, I know you're not telling me something, what is it, but then Percy would never tell him anything ever again. He knows how to like balance those things. You need to be somebody that can balance those things. People come to me all the time. People come to me all the time and like tell me things, and I know that there's like more behind what they're saying, and I'll just be like, I'm just gonna sit and wait. And like sometimes they don't tell me what the rest of that is for like years, but I just know that eventually they'll like say it. If we talk long enough, it will eventually come out. And it usually does in some way. But it's just, if you just give people time instead of trying to force them, they'll tell you whatever you would want to know. It's just not on your timetable. But like, who the fuck cares? It should be on their timetable. That's like the number one thing I wish people would learn. And I feel like looking at Chiron is a good example of that, because like, yeah, it is easy to just be upset with him, but also he is doing a lot of the stuff that leads to these kids actually surviving. And it's not easy at all to be that person in that role, knowing that bad things are happening, but like sticking it out anyway, and just like hoping that your positive influence will like help them in the long run. And it definitely does. Like, it helps Percy a lot. I don't know if he would have like I don't think he would have ever survived all the books to get to the end, without Chiron there to kind of try to help guide him a little bit. And it's just, that's why I really like him as a character, and don't get too upset with him, because it just is really hard to be that person that's in between. Most people don't have the guts to do it, honestly. Like, most adults that I knew growing up, like family and stuff, they weren't really around. They would just like drop off because, and I understand it, but it still sucks. Like, they dropped off because it was hard for them to watch us going through like bad things, especially me. And because my dad would just yell at me in front of everybody. And so it was hard for them to watch that knowing that bad things were happening. And so they just weren't around. But that also meant that, all those bad things were still happening. They just didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And so it is hard to like watch those things happen but be there to see it. But if you care about the people around that's affected by them, it is worth it.
It is. Yeah.
That's why I always appreciate these books for doing that. Just having people like him around these kids in some way.
We have for tonight. So yeah, as Shannon said earlier, we are going to read the Demigod Diaries and the Demigod Files for Monday, just so that we can get kind of the background of what all took place before Luke, Thalia, and Annabeth got to camp, since that will likely be in this next season. And did we plan for Last Olympian after that?
After that, it's just... I don't have anything for next Wednesday, just in case we don't go through everything in the short stories, but then after that it's just the one episode of all the references for the heroes of every book, and then starting the Last Olympian.
Yeah. So we've got a little ways before we get to the big book, but I think we'll be able to pull it off where we'll finish Last Olympian with plenty of time for next season.
Sophia, we're not reading all of the short stories. We're reading the ones that go into... that are before the last Olympian. There are certain ones that have characters from Heroes of Olympus in them.
Oh, okay.
And so I'll tell you which ones to read before we get there, since you won't know who any of those people are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to keep it in order as best we can, because I know that some of the companion works are multiple, they're all over the place with where they go chronologically, right?
They came out after the Last Olympian, and he put those things out afterwards to give us more context, basically. Yeah. And the Demigod Diaries is the most important, because that's what they used to write the flashback scenes in season 2, and everyone talks about it, so we have to read it before we go into the end of Luke.
Before we see it. All right, so yeah, that's our plan moving forward. And yeah, I don't know what else to say to end it.
That's all we got.
Yep. All right, so we will see you guys again for Monday's podcast.